Training might not be fun when you're doing it and can feel more like a cause to be upset. But afterwards, it brings a calm and right feeling to those who learned from it. When you work hard to do something good, the hard work ends fast, but the good results stay. If you do something bad for fun, the fun goes away fast, but the bad feeling stays. Picture yourself walking in old Rome, hearing smart people talk about why we suffer and how to find peace. Meanwhile, in a far-off place called Judea, a religious teacher is telling people about a heavenly kingdom and how to find peace inside themselves. Even though these two situations are in different places and cultures, they both tell us something important. The way we see the world changes our reality. It's interesting to see the similarities in what they say. Let's dig deeper into how they're connected, but first, here's a small clue. Seneca once wondered, why do you talk about other people's problems when you have your own? Similarly, Jesus asked, why do you notice the small fault in someone else but ignore your own big faults? It's important to say that from a Christian view, we're not saying Stoic thinkers like Seneca are the same as Jesus Christ. People like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius were just people with their own mistakes, while many see Jesus as God on earth. Still, it's clear that both their teachings still influence and help people today. In this discussion, we're going to look at how they're similar and think about whether Jesus might have been a bit stoic in his thinking. I suggest you look over this material a few times to really understand its deep meaning. The links between Stoicism and Christianity are very eye-opening. The teachings of Jesus and Seneca stick with us. It feels like we already know this. Even though they came from different cultures and traditions, they both are based on the same big idea. The way we see things inside can change how we experience the world outside. Before we get into Jesus' life and lessons, let's look at the start and growth of a philosophy similar to Stoicism. Stoicism began in Athens, a key place for Western philosophy, around the 4th century BC. Zeno of Citium started it, getting ideas from Socrates and the Cynics. He set up a school at the Painted Porch, which is where Stoic comes from. Early Stoics like Zeno, and later ones like Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, and Epictetus, believed that real happiness comes from being good and wise, not from money or fame. They thought life is about how we react to things, not just what happens to us. While we can't control the world around us, we can control our own thoughts and actions. Their main idea was to live in tune with nature, accept whatever happens, and find inner peace through self-discipline and goodness. Marcus Aurelius, a famous Roman emperor and a strong believer in Stoicism, said, "Life is brief, and our time here doesn't last long. Live like you're on a mountain." Just like Jesus told his followers not to gather earthly treasures, Marcus Aurelius also tells us that life is short, and we should live it with real purpose and meaning. Thinking about these deep ideas about life, death, and being good, we can't help but wonder how these Stoic lessons compare to what Jesus taught. Did Jesus, a carpenter's son from a far-off place in Judea, know about these ideas? Or did he come up with similar thoughts on his own about people and the meaning of life? Keeping these questions in mind, let's go over to Judea and learn about Jesus' life and his teachings. We'll see how this influential spiritual leader talked about things like money, life, and truth. In the center of the Roman Empire, in a less important area named Judea, Jesus of Nazareth was born around 4 BC. His parents were Mary and Joseph. He lived in a time controlled by strong political and religious powers. Even though he was a big change-maker back then, there aren't many historical details about his life. Most of what we understand about him is from the New Testament Gospels. Jesus lived in a time when the Romans were in control, and there was a lot of religious conflict. But instead of fighting against the Romans, Jesus talked about changing ourselves inside, in our hearts and minds. His teachings, which were part of Jewish beliefs, are surprisingly similar to Stoic ideas. For example, in the Beatitudes, Jesus said, "Happy are those who are humble, because they will receive heaven." This idea, valuing humility and not being focused on oneself, is something Stoics would agree with. Also, in Luke's Gospel, Jesus said, "Be careful and avoid wanting too much, because life is not about having lots of things." This idea is like the Stoic belief that real value is in our spirit and character, not in things we own. Jesus, using his deep knowledge, encourages his followers to look beyond everyday worries and think about lasting truths. Like the Stoics, he realizes that we can't control everything that happens, but we can control our reactions to them. It's right here where Stoic values and Jesus' teachings meet, that we see they're similar. Staying calm when things are tough, keeping self-control when tempted, and always trying to be good are important in both their teachings. Thinking about this, can we say that Jesus was an early kind of Stoic? Or should we say that both ways, different in culture and tradition, meet at the same big truths? As we keep exploring, let's look more into how they're similar, especially in being good and self-controlled. Let's see how Jesus, just like the famous Stoic philosophers, stressed the need to live with a clear goal, honesty, and calmness, no matter what life throws at us. Stoic philosophy is built around this big idea: the only life worth living is one filled with virtue. For Stoics, being virtuous isn't just about following moral rules. It's the heart of a good, meaningful life. Zeno, who started Stoicism, said, "Virtue means choosing wisely based on reason. It's about living in a way that fits with logic and nature." Think about how calm Jesus was, even when he was suffering on the cross. He accepted his situation and asked for forgiveness for others. "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." This calmness in tough times is a lot like what Stoics aim for. Epictetus, a famous Stoic, said in his book, "It's not what happens that upsets people, but what they think about it." It means our response to hard times matters more than the hard times themselves. The way Jesus and the Stoics focus on being good and self-disciplined is similar. Both understand that we can't control everything outside us, but can control how we react inside. Imagine Jesus and the famous Stoics together, talking about how we should act towards physical things. Picture Jesus chatting with Marcus Aurelius, who was both a philosopher and an emperor. Jesus warns about the risks of being rich and how hard it is for a rich person to get into heaven, while Marcus Aurelius thinks about how short-lived physical things are. Together, they would encourage us to not focus on material things, but on the real value of our spirit and who we are as people. To explore this made-up conversation more, let's look at what they think about not being too attached to material things in the next part. Picture a peaceful afternoon in Jerusalem. The old stones of the temple shine in the evening light. In one spot, Jesus of Nazareth, looking calm and thoughtful, meets Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king of Rome. Even though they lived in different times and places, it's like their ideas are connected. Marcus starts talking, "Teacher from Galilee, I find deep wisdom in your words, wisdom that would be understood in Rome. You talk about not clinging to wealth, and I've thought about how short-lived our physical things are. What's your view on how people should relate to their stuff?" Jesus, understanding the emperor, answers, "I tell you, it's easier for a camel to pass through a needle's eye than for a wealthy person to get into God's kingdom." The emperor, realizing how meaningful this is, says, "In my writings, I mentioned that we don't need much to be happy. It's all about how you think. Wealth can often distract us from this fact. Both leaders, though coming from different backgrounds, agree on one thing. Having stuff isn't the issue. It's how much we let these things matter to us and shape our goals and self-worth. As our made-up talk ends, we're left with a big question to think about. How important are physical things in our lives? Do they define who we are, or are they just things we use to make our lives and others' lives better? Still, we can't overlook the key differences in their ideas and main practices. Jesus, with his endless love for others and his push for helping, and Seneca, focusing on being good and helping the community, offer two ideas that go well together. But what if they had a chance to meet and talk? In the next part, we'll imagine a conversation between Jesus and Seneca, looking at what they have in common and what's different, and how they might talk about love, society, and what it means to be human. On a rooftop with a view of many olive trees and bright fields, Jesus meets Seneca, a well-known philosopher and Roman Empire advisor. As the evening shadows grow, they both talk about a timeless topic: caring for others and helping society. Seneca, speaking seriously and thoughtfully, asks, "Master, I've noticed your teachings really focus on caring for others. In Rome, we also care about our society, but we think more about fairness and responsibility. How do you understand this kind of love, and how can it show in real actions?" Jesus, with a deep look in his eyes, answers, "Care for your neighbor like you care for yourself. This is the most important rule." Mark 12:31. Real love isn't about what you get, but about doing things for others' benefit. It's this kind of giving love that creates a strong community. Seneca agrees and thinks about it, saying, "In Stoic talks, we discuss sympathy and how everyone is connected. Your words sound similar. In my books I've written, all humans' well-being is linked. If something is good for everyone, we're all part of it." It looks like we're both talking about how each thing we do affects our community. Jesus smiles and says, "Any kind gesture, no matter how small, is like a pebble in a pond. It creates waves that touch people far beyond what we can see. That's how God's kingdom works, like a tiny seed growing into a big, fruitful plant." Seneca, understanding this, finishes, "Even though our beliefs and ways are different, loving others and working for everyone's good is something that connects us. We all can make our community better with what we do every day." As the sun goes down, painting the sky with orange and purple colors, the talk between Jesus and Seneca ends, but its impact stays with us. It makes us think about how important it is to have kindness, understanding and love without conditions to make the world a better place. Now, as we think about this deep discussion, we move to a new conversation between Jesus and Epictetus, where we'll look into how their beliefs and ways of doing things are different. In an imaginary room, Jesus sits calmly with a kind look in his eyes. Facing him is Epictetus, looking serious. These two great thinkers, both caring about human values, goodness, and life's purpose, come from different beliefs. "Teacher from Nazareth," Epictetus starts, "I've always believed that our choices are guided by logic, and this is how we find real freedom. What's your view on human choice and its connection to faith?" Jesus, always thinking deeply, replies, "Real freedom is in understanding the truth, and the truth will make you free." John's Gospel. He adds, "Faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we can't see." Letter to the Hebrews. Epictetus nods, understanding the meaning of Jesus' words. We believe that logic, if it goes along with nature, leads us to being good. I think faith means not using logic, and while it's strong, it might lead us away from what's really true Epictetus says. Jesus answers, "You can tell what kind of tree it is by its fruit." True faith doesn't go against our choices are guided by beyond it and shows us deeper, lasting truths. Epictetus, remembering his own words, adds, "What bothers us isn't what happens, but how we think about it. So, how we see the world, using logic, decides how happy we are." The atmosphere in the room shifts, not to tension, but to serious thinking. Both realize that although they aim to lead people to inner peace and goodness, their ways of understanding and connecting with the world are really different. This makes us think about the religious background of Christianity and the Stoic way of seeing things. Christianity focuses on a God-centered universe, while Stoicism is more about natura and logic. Both these ideas are valuable and give us unique ways to see and live in the world. Keeping this in mind, we need to explore these differences more and see how they can add to each other. In our next part, we'll look into Christian beliefs and Stoic views, trying to find a middle ground between faith and logic. The room, still echoing the recent talk between Jesus and Epictetus, now feels different, filled with thoughts. Christian belief talks about a God who loves and looks after people, while Stoicism thinks of the universe as a big, logical system, ruled by something they call logos, or universal reason. Christianity tells us about a kind God who became a person in Jesus of Nazareth, showing great love by becoming human to save people from their mistakes. This faith is about a connection, about how God and people, the Creator and His creations, interact. In contrast, Stoicism views the world as a place of logic and natural order. It's not about a personal God in charge, but about a universal logic that exists in everything. Seneca, a famous Stoic, wrote, "God isn't separate from the world, He's a part of it." He believed that living in line with nature and its rules is how to be wise and good. Even though they're different, both ways of thinking can help each other. Christianity's focus on connection and kindness highlights why relationships and grace are important. Stoicism, with its stress on self-discipline, gives us a way to use that kindness in real life every day. After thinking about all this, we have a big question. Can we combine Christian teachings with Stoic ways and thinking? Could Jesus, with his innovative ideas about love and kindness, be seen as a sort of Stoic leader? Kevin Rowe, an expert on the New Testament at Duke University, points out that Stoicism and Christianity have similarities and often cross paths in history. In the 2nd century, Tertullian talked about Seneca as often ours, and Jerome just called him ours. Augustine in City of God also mentioned Seneca's impact. This overlap between the two ideas makes us wonder, can someone be both a Christian and a Stoic? Some people try to blend these beliefs together, while others focus on how they're different. Even though completely mixing them might be hard, it's acknowledged that a Christian can use Stoic ideas to add to their faith, and the other way around. Josephson, who studies the Bible, uses Seneca's words to show how learning from different philosophies is important. Dodson says, "Jesus Christ is my way, truth, and life, but I believe Stoicism has made my understanding and devotion to Christianity deeper." Kevin Bosch, who works in clinical psychology and wrote Between the Porch and the Cross, agrees and notes, "In my studies, I found a lot of things in common between Epictetus' teachings and how some Christians today think about families and ethics around having children. Even though we can't call the Stoics Christians, it's clear their ideas can be really helpful to everyone." In both Stoic and Christian teachings, we find similar lessons about 1. Being okay with what you have. "I've learned to be okay no matter what happens. I can live with little or a lot." Paul, Seneca says, "What matters is how you think, not what happens." We should see if a rich person can stay okay if they become poor, and if a poor person can stay okay if they get rich. 2. Not getting back at others. Jesus teaches, don't fight back against someone who does you wrong. If they hit you, offer the other cheek too. Seneca believes only someone who is not wise seeks revenge. 3. Treating others well. Jesus says, treat people the way you want to be treated. Seneca notes, wherever there are people, there's a chance to be kind. 4. Thinking about death. Always remember you're going to die, and you won't do wrong. Sirach 7:36. You might die at any moment. Let that guide what you do, say, and think. Marcus Aurelius. 5. Handling worry. Worry makes you feel heavy, but a kind word lifts you up. Proverbs 12:25. I got rid of anxiety today. It was in my own thoughts, not in the world outside. Marcus Aurelius. 6. Showing love. Most importantly, love each other deeply. Peter. Don't be controlled by your feelings, but still love others. Marcus Aurelius. 7. Being disciplined. Discipline doesn't feel nice now, but it's worth it later. It leads to doing right and having peace if you learn from it. Hebrews 12:11. If you work hard for something good, the hard work ends, but the goodness lasts. If you do something bad for fun, the fun ends, but the shame stays. Musonius Rufus. 8. Handling anger. Don't get angry quickly because anger is for foolish people. Ecclesiastes 7:9. Anger is loud, dangerous, and a bad leader. It's tricky to be around. If you give in to it, it'll control you. If you try to fight it, it'll tire you out. Seneca. 9. Seeking calm. Stay calm and remember God is in control. Psalms 46:10. Go from one kind act to another, thinking of God. That's where you'll find true peace. Marcus Aurelius. 10. Setting examples. Act like God, as his loved children, and live with love, just like Christ did when he gave himself for us. Paul. Pick someone to look up to, someone whose actions and words, and even their face, show their good character. Keep thinking of them as your guide or example. Seneca. 11. Being kind to those who don't like you. If your enemy is hungry, give them food. If they're thirsty, give them water. By doing this, you'll make them feel ashamed. Romans 12:20. Being truly good is unbeatable. If you're genuinely kind, not just pretending, what can an enemy's hate do to you? Keep being nice to them, and if you get a chance, point out their mistakes gently and in private. It's your job to be a good person, but you can't change someone else's character. Marcus Aurelius. On this trip we've taken moving through time and different ways of thinking, we've considered whether Jesus, the Christian Savior, might have things in common with famous Stoic philosophers. Both ways of thinking, even though they're different, agree on big truths about people, right and wrong, and why we're here. Christianity focuses on God's deep love and having a close connection with him, while Stoicism gives us ways to live well with nature and stay calm during hard times. Thinking about these ideas, we understand that no matter what religion we follow, there are important lessons we can use in our everyday life. Like it says in the Gospel of John, knowing the truth will make you free. So it doesn't matter if you follow Jesus, agree with Marcus Aurelius, or just want to understand yourself and the world better. You're encouraged to live with a clear goal, honesty, and a love that goes beyond all limits. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.